Welcome to Los Angeles. The year is 1950. You have just arrived in the dream factory of the world. This is not just a city. This is the place where fantasies are manufactured, packaged, and shipped to every corner of the planet. Right now, almost 2 million people call Los Angeles home, and thousands more arrive every single month. All of them chasing the same impossible dream. They come from small towns in Kansas, from farms in Oklahoma, from crowded apartments in New York. They come with a suitcase, a few dollars, and the absolute certainty that they will be the next big thing. Most of them will fail, but that does not stop anyone from trying because this city runs on hope, and hope never goes out of style. Look around you. The palm trees sway gently against a sky so blue it almost looks painted. The air smells like orange blossoms and gasoline and possibility. In the distance, you can see the Hollywood sign perched on Mount Lee, those giant white letters that have become the symbol of ambition itself. Down on the boulevards, long convertibles glide past like chrome-plated sharks, carrying men in sharp suits and women in sunglasses who might be movie stars or might just be pretending to be movie stars. In this town, it is often hard to tell the difference. This is Los Angeles at the height of its golden age, and there is no place on earth quite like it. The Second World War ended 5 years ago, and America is riding a wave of prosperity unlike anything the world has ever seen. The boys came home, the factories switched from making tanks to making refrigerators, and suddenly everyone has money to spend. And what do Americans want to spend their money on? Entertainment, movies, escape. Every week, nearly 90 million Americans go to the movies. That is almost 2/3 of the entire population buying tickets, sitting in the dark, and letting Hollywood transport them to another world. The studios are making more films than ever before, the stars are more glamorous than ever before, and the money is flowing like water in the Los Angeles River during a rare rainstorm. But here is what makes this moment so special, and also so fragile. Right now, in 1950, the movie studios are still kingdoms. Paramount, Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer, Warner Brothers, 20th Century Fox, RKO. These are not just companies. They are empires. Each one owns its own production facilities, its own roster of stars under exclusive contracts, and until very recently, each one owned its own chain of movie theaters too. The men who run these studios, and they are all men, are some of the most powerful figures in America. What they decide to make, the world will watch. What they decide is beautiful, the world will imitate. What they decide is moral, the world will accept, at least for now. Because change is coming, even if nobody in Los Angeles wants to admit it yet. A strange new box called television is starting to appear in living rooms across America. And it is offering something the movies cannot. Entertainment that comes directly into your home, for free. But in 1950, television still feels like a toy, a novelty, nothing that could ever threaten the mighty motion picture industry. The studios are confident, the stars are radiant, the dream machine is running at full power. So take a deep breath and step into the golden age. You are about to see a city that exists halfway between reality and fantasy, a place where waitresses become goddesses and nobodies become legends, where fortunes are made and broken before lunch, where everything sparkles under the California sun. This is Hollywood at its absolute peak, and you have a front row seat. To understand Los Angeles in the early 1950s, you have to understand that this city was built differently from any other great metropolis in history. There is no ancient center here, no medieval quarter, no grand plaza where emperors once held court. Los Angeles sprawls across the landscape like a creature that refuses to be contained, stretching from the mountains to the sea, from the desert to the valleys, a patchwork of neighborhoods connected by wide boulevards and, increasingly, by the concrete ribbons of new freeways that are slowly stitching the whole thing together. But if you want to find the true heart of this city in 1952, you do not go to City Hall or to the harbor or to the financial district downtown. You go to the studios. Because in Los Angeles, the movie studios are not just places where films are made. They are self-contained kingdoms, small cities within the city, and the men who run them wield more power than most politicians ever will. Drive through the gates of Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer in Culver City, and you enter a world unto itself. Behind those walls, there are 23 sound stages, a backlot with permanent sets representing every corner of the world, a commissary where stars eat lunch alongside electricians, and an army of nearly 4,000 employees who do everything from building sets to styling wigs to training lions. MGM boasts that it has more stars than there are in heaven. And walking around the lot, you might spot Clark Gable heading to a fitting, or Elizabeth Taylor rehearsing a scene, or Gene Kelly working out a dance routine until his feet bleed. Across town, Paramount occupies an entire neighborhood in Hollywood proper, its famous arched gate promising entry into another dimension of glamour and make-believe. Warner Brothers sits in Burbank, surrounded by orange groves that are slowly giving way to suburban houses. 20th Century Fox spreads across a massive lot on Pico Boulevard, its back lot so large that it includes a full-scale replica of a New York City street. And Universal, perched in the hills above the San Fernando Valley, is already starting to give tours to curious visitors who want to see how the magic is made. The physical landmarks of Hollywood have become pilgrimage sites for fans from around the world. On Hollywood Boulevard, Grauman's Chinese Theater rises like a fever dream of pagodas and dragons, its forecourt embedded with the hand and footprints of the greatest stars in cinema history. Walk carefully here, and you are literally stepping in the footsteps of legends. Just a few blocks away, the Hollywood Roosevelt Hotel hosts the Glamorous and the Ambitious in its Spanish colonial lobby, the same hotel where the very first Academy Awards ceremony was held back in 1929. Sunset Boulevard stretches westward like a river of neon and noise, lined with nightclubs where Sinatra might croon and starlets might be discovered, places like Quiroz and the Mocambo and the Trocadero, where the boundaries between performance and real life blur into nothing. And if you follow sunset far enough west, you climb into the hills of Beverly Hills and Bel Air, where the mansions hide behind hedges and gates, where swimming pools sparkle like scattered sapphires, and where the people who appear 60 feet tall on movie screens live their private lives away from the cameras. But who really runs this town? On paper, the answer is simple enough. The mayor of Los Angeles in 1952 is Fletcher Bowron, a reform-minded politician who has spent more than a decade trying to clean up corruption in city government. He will soon be replaced by Norris Polson, a congressman who promises to bring the Dodgers baseball team from Brooklyn and to keep building those freeways that everyone agrees the city desperately needs. These are the official leaders, the elected representatives, the men whose names appear in the newspapers when civic matters are discussed. But everyone in Los Angeles knows that the real power lies elsewhere. The real power lies in the hands of the studio chiefs, the moguls, the men who built Hollywood from nothing and who guard their creation with ferocious intensity. Louis B. Mayer at MGM, Jack Warner at Warner Brothers, Darrell F. Zanuck at 20th Century Fox, Harry Cohn at Columbia. These are names that make people tremble in this town. Most of them are immigrants, or the sons of immigrants, men who came from poverty in Eastern Europe and who built empires through brilliance, ruthlessness, and an almost supernatural understanding of what the American public wants to see. They control not just the movies, but the people who make them. The contract system means that actors, directors, writers, and technicians are bound to their studios for years at a time, unable to work elsewhere without permission, their images carefully managed, their scandals ruthlessly suppressed, their lives shaped by forces beyond their control. A young actress signed to MGM does not choose her own roles or her own publicity, or even her own name. The studio decides everything, and in exchange, the studio promises to make her a star. It is a bargain that has created the most glamorous celebrities the world has ever known, but it is also a bargain that can crush a person without warning. And hovering over everything is the production code, the set of moral guidelines that determines what can and cannot be shown on American movie screens. Administered by the Hays Office and enforced with rigid precision, the code forbids depictions of adultery that go unpunished, criminals who escape justice, or any hint of sexuality that might corrupt the innocent. Married couples in the movies sleep in separate beds. Villains always pay for their crimes. Kisses cannot last longer than 3 seconds. The code shapes not just what Hollywood produces, but how Americans think about morality itself, creating a vision of the world that is cleaner, simpler, and more just than reality has ever been. But here is a secret that the studio chiefs already suspect, even if they refuse to say it out loud: this system cannot last forever. The Supreme Court has already ruled that the studios must sell their theater chains, breaking up the vertical monopolies that guaranteed profits for decades. Television is growing faster than anyone predicted, and a new generation of actors and directors is starting to chafe against the old rules, hungry for something more authentic than the polished fantasies the studios have been selling. The golden age is glittering brighter than ever, but those who look closely can already see the first cracks forming in the facade. If the studios are kingdoms, then money is the blood that keeps them alive. And in 1954, that blood is flowing in quantities that would make a Wall Street banker dizzy. Making a major motion picture in Hollywood costs somewhere between $1 million and $5 million, depending on the scale of the production. And the biggest spectacles can cost even more. A single epic with thousands of extras, elaborate costumes, and location shooting in exotic lands might swallow $10 million before a single ticket is sold. But the studios spend this money because they know it will come back multiplied. A successful picture can earn $20 or $30 million at the box office, and the biggest hits can earn even more when you add in foreign distribution, merchandise, and the endless reruns that will eventually play on that pesky new invention called television. Hollywood is not just an art form. It is an industry, and business is booming. The stars themselves are compensated accordingly, though the gap between the highest paid and the merely successful is vast enough to swallow entire careers. A top star like Clark Gable or Humphrey Bogart earns somewhere around $300,000 per picture, plus a percentage of the profits that can push their annual income well past the $1 million mark. Elizabeth Taylor, still in her early 20s, is already commanding fees that make her one of the highest-paid women in America. Marilyn Monroe, despite being the most famous face on the planet, fights bitterly with her studio over money because her contract was signed before anyone knew she would become a phenomenon. She earns a fraction of what her pictures bring in, and her resentment grows with every passing year. Meanwhile, the character actors and the supporting players and the young contract players just starting out might earn a few $100s a week, enough to live comfortably, but not enough to join the mansions and Cadillacs crowd. And below them, the army of technicians and craftspeople who actually make the movies happen, the camera operators, the set builders, the makeup artists, the costume sewers, earn union wages that provide a solid middle-class living, but nothing close to glamour. Outside the studio walls, Los Angeles in the mid-1950s is a city where money flows freely if you know where to find it. The American economy is the strongest in the world, the dollar is king, and consumer confidence has never been higher. A modest bungalow in a decent neighborhood might cost $15,000, which sounds affordable until you remember that the average American family earns around $4,000 per year. But in Beverly Hills, the numbers are different entirely. A mansion with a swimming pool and tennis courts might cost $200,000 or more, and the people who buy them pay in cash without blinking. On Rodeo Drive, which is just beginning its transformation into the luxury shopping destination it will eventually become, you can find jewelers and furriers and boutiques catering to women who think nothing of spending a working man's annual salary on a single outfit. The restaurants of Hollywood, Chasen's, Romanoff's, the Brown Derby, serve steaks and martinis to moguls who negotiate deals between courses, where the price of dinner might exceed what a secretary earns in a month, and where being seen at the right table matters almost as much as the food itself. The hotels tell their own stories of wealth and ambition and carefully managed scandal. The Beverly Hills Hotel, that pink palace on Sunset Boulevard, has become a second home for stars who want privacy and producers who want to impress. Its Polo Lounge is where deals are made over eggs, Benedict and fresh squeezed orange juice, where the phone is brought to your table so you can take calls without interrupting your breakfast, where everyone pretends not to notice the famous faces at the next booth while noticing everything. The Chateau Marmont, a Gothic revival castle perched above the Sunset Strip, offers a different kind of discretion. Its bungalows and suites have witnessed romances and breakdowns and creative breakthroughs that will never make the gossip columns, because the chateau understands that what happens within its walls stays within its walls. And the Hollywood Roosevelt continues to host the glamorous and the hopeful. It's poolside, a gathering place for young actors who pose casually while secretly hoping to be discovered by some passing executive. But for every star living in splendor, there are thousands of dreamers living on the margins, and this contrast defines Hollywood as much as the glamour does. Walk into any coffee shop on Hollywood Boulevard, and you will find them. The waitresses who came west to become actresses, the busboys who write screenplays in their tiny apartments after their shifts end, the young men and women who arrived with certainty and are slowly learning what it means to wait. They share cramped rooms in boarding houses, they stretch their dollars across weeks of hunger, they attend every audition and submit every headshot, and tell themselves that their break is coming. It has to be coming, because the alternative is too terrible to consider. Some of them will make it. Every generation produces a few Cinderella stories, a few nobodies who become somebodies, a few dreamers whose dreams actually come true. But most of them will eventually give up, will pack their bags and return to the small towns they came from, will spend the rest of their lives telling stories about that time they almost made it in Hollywood. The Dream Factory runs on their hope just as surely as it runs on money, consuming their youth and ambition and giving back, for most of them, nothing but memories of what might have been. The stars of Hollywood in 1956 live lives that seem almost impossibly glamorous to the millions who watch them on screen. Yet behind the carefully constructed images, they are human beings navigating pressures that few outsiders can truly comprehend. Consider Marilyn Monroe, who by now has become the most photographed woman in the world, her face appearing on magazine covers from New York to Tokyo, her every movement tracked by reporters and fans who treat her less like a person and more like a phenomenon. She has married and divorced a baseball legend. She has studied acting with the most respected teachers in New York. She has fought her studio for better roles and better pay, and yet something in her eyes suggests a sadness that no amount of fame can cure. Or consider James Dean, who just a year earlier captivated audiences with his raw, electric performances in East of Eden and Rebel Without a Cause, films that seem to speak directly to a new generation hungry for authenticity. But James Dean is no longer with us, having lost his life in a car accident on a California highway in September of 1955, at just 24 years old, leaving behind only 3 films and a legend that will never stop growing. The roster of stars working in Hollywood during these years reads like a catalog of immortality. Humphrey Bogart, that tough-talking icon of film noir, continues making pictures even as his health begins to fail. Grace Kelly, the cool blonde goddess who won an Academy Award and captured a prince, has just left Hollywood to become the Princess of Monaco, trading one fairy tale for another. Marlon Brando prowls through his roles with an intensity that makes other actors seem like they are merely pretending. Audrey Hepburn enchants audiences with her gamine elegance, a new kind of beauty for a new era. Frank Sinatra has reinvented himself from a fading crooner into a serious dramatic actor, winning an Oscar and proving that second acts are possible even in the most unforgiving industry. And a young newcomer named Paul Newman is just beginning to attract attention, his blue eyes and method training promising great things to come. These are the faces that Americans see when they go to the movies, the faces that define beauty and coolness and romance for an entire generation. But the culture that surrounds these stars is equally fascinating, a machinery of fame that operates around the clock to shape public perception. The fan magazines, Photoplay, Modern Screen, Movie Mirror, publish breathless articles about the romantic lives and domestic bliss of the stars, most of it carefully planted by studio publicists who understand that the public wants to believe their idols are both extraordinary and somehow relatable. The gossip columnists Hedda Hopper and Luella Parsons wield enormous power, their syndicated columns reaching millions of readers who devour every rumor and revelation. Cross these women, and your career might suffer. Court their favor, and you might find yourself on the fast track to stardom. The premiere of a major picture at Grauman's Chinese Theater is an event that draws thousands of fans who line Hollywood Boulevard for hours, hoping to catch a glimpse of their favorites stepping out of limousines and waving to the crowd, the searchlights cutting through the night sky like beacons announcing that something important is happening here. Away from the Klieg lights, the ordinary citizens of Los Angeles live lives shaped by the automobile in ways that no other American city has yet experienced. This is a city built for driving, a city where distances are measured not in blocks, but in minutes behind the wheel, where the freeway system is expanding every year to accommodate the endless rivers of chrome and steel that flow through the basin. The car is not just transportation here. It is identity, status, freedom itself. Families pile into their sedans on Friday nights and head to the drive-in theater where they can watch the latest pictures from the comfort of their own vehicle, the children in pajamas in the back seat, popcorn passed from hand to hand in the darkness. Teenagers cruise the boulevards in their parents' cars, or in jalopies they have fixed up themselves, looking for adventure, looking for romance, looking for something that feels like the beginning of real life. The drive-in restaurant has become an institution. Car hops skating between vehicles to deliver hamburgers and milkshakes and French fries, a meal eaten without ever leaving your seat, the radio playing rock and roll through the open windows. The suburbs are spreading outward in every direction, new developments rising from what was recently farmland or desert. Each house with its own lawn and its own garage and its own promise of the American dream. In July of 1955, something remarkable opened in Anaheim, about 25 miles southeast of downtown Los Angeles, a place called Disneyland, the creation of a man named Walt Disney, who had already revolutionized animation and now wanted to build a new kind of amusement park, a place where families could step into the worlds they had seen in movies and television. Opening day was chaotic, with overcrowding and broken rides and counterfeit tickets, but within months, Disneyland had become a sensation, drawing visitors from around the world who wanted to walk down Main Street, USA, and ride through Fantasyland and glimpse the future in Tomorrowland. It was entertainment made physical, the Hollywood magic translated into 3 dimensions you could touch and smell and experience, and it would change the way Americans thought about leisure forever. Yet, for all its sunshine and prosperity, Los Angeles in the mid-1950s is not paradise for everyone. The city remains deeply segregated, with black families largely confined to neighborhoods like Watts and certain parts of South Central, excluded from the suburbs by restrictive covenants and discriminatory lending practices, even though such covenants have technically been ruled unenforceable. Mexican-American communities face their own barriers, their contributions to the city often overlooked, their children attending underfunded schools. The Japanese-American population is still recovering from the trauma of internment during the war, rebuilding lives and businesses that were taken from them with a single executive order. And even among white Angelenos, the pressure to conform to certain ideals, the perfect family, the perfect home, the perfect career, creates anxieties that bubble beneath the sunny surface. Hollywood sells dreams of perfection, but the people who live in its shadow know that perfection is an illusion, that behind the hedges and the swimming pools and the smiling faces, ordinary struggles continue in ordinary ways. As the 1950s draw to a close, the people of Los Angeles go about their lives with no way of knowing that the world they inhabit is already slipping into history. The studios still produce their pictures, the stars still shine on the boulevards, the palm trees still sway against that impossibly blue sky. But the foundations are shifting beneath it all, and the golden age that seemed so permanent is entering its final chapter. Television, that flickering box that the moguls once dismissed as a passing fad, now sits in nearly 90% of American homes, and families who once went to the movies every week are discovering that they can be entertained without ever leaving their living rooms. Theater attendance has dropped by half since 1946, and the grand movie palaces that once packed in thousands of viewers are starting to feel empty, their ornate lobbies echoing with the footsteps of smaller and smaller crowds. The studios respond by making their pictures bigger and more spectacular. Widescreen processes, stereophonic sound, casts of thousands, but they are fighting a battle that cannot be won with spectacle alone. The contract system that once gave the studios absolute control over their stars is crumbling year by year. Actors are demanding the right to choose their own projects, to form their own production companies, to keep a larger share of the profits their fame generates. James Stewart and Burt Lancaster have already shown that independence can be more lucrative than servitude, and others are following their example. The moguls who built Hollywood are aging now, their grip on power loosening, their understanding of what audiences want increasingly out of step with a changing America. Louis B. Mayer, the lion of MGM, has already been forced out of the studio he helped create. The old ways are dying, and no one yet knows what will replace them. Meanwhile, the losses continue to mount among the brightest stars of the era. Humphrey Bogart, that gravelly-voiced icon who defined screen toughness for a generation, lost his battle with illness in January of 1957 at the age of 57. Tyrone Power collapsed on a film set in Spain in 1958 and never recovered. And the world still mourns James Dean, whose brief career and sudden departure transformed him into something more than an actor. He became a symbol of youth itself, forever frozen at 24, forever rebellious, forever beautiful. But what remains of the Golden Age is not nothing. What remains is everything. The films made during these years will outlive everyone who made them, preserved on celluloid and eventually on formats not yet invented, watched and rewatched by generations who were not yet born when the cameras rolled. The performances of Bogart and Monroe and Brando and Hepburn will continue to move audiences 100 years from now, their faces as familiar to future viewers as they are to us today. The studios themselves still stand, transformed but surviving, their lots and sound stages still producing entertainment, even if the system that built them has been dismantled and rebuilt several times over. Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer, Paramount, Warner Brothers, Universal. These names still mean something, still carry the weight of history, still evoke the glamour and ambition that defined an era. Walk down Hollywood Boulevard today, and you can still find the ghosts of the Golden Age if you know where to look. Grauman's Chinese theater still rises in its Oriental fantasy splendor, the hand and footprints of legends still embedded in its forecourt, tourists still pressing their own hands into the impressions left by stars who have long since departed. The Hollywood sign still perches on Mount Lee, those white letters now protected as a historic monument, a symbol recognized around the world. The Walk of Fame stretches for blocks, more than 2,000 stars embedded in the sidewalk, names that range from the eternally famous to the almost forgotten, each one representing a career, a dream, a life spent in the pursuit of something that might be called immortality. The studios have opened their gates to tours, allowing ordinary people to walk the same paths that Gable and Garbo once walked, to stand on sound stages where classic scenes were filmed, to touch the machinery of dream-making that once operated in total secrecy. And perhaps that is the truest legacy of Hollywood's Golden Age. Not the buildings or the boulevards, or even the films themselves, but the idea that ordinary people can become extraordinary, that talent and beauty and luck can transform a nobody into a legend, that somewhere out there a spotlight is waiting for anyone brave enough to step into it. This idea was not invented in Los Angeles, but it was perfected here, refined and packaged and sold to the world with such effectiveness that it became part of the American identity itself. The Golden Age ended, as all ages must, but the dream it created never really died. It simply changed shape, adapted to new technologies and new tastes, found new faces to worship and new stories to tell. Los Angeles is still the city of dreams, still the place where hopefuls arrive with suitcases and ambition, still the factory where fantasies are manufactured for global consumption. The palm trees still sway, the sun still shines, and somewhere on a studio lot, a camera is rolling on a scene that might just become the next classic. The Golden Age is gone, but its light still flickers in every frame of film ever shot, every star who ever posed for a photograph, every dreamer who ever looked west and imagined a different life. That light will never go out completely. It will simply keep glowing, forever preserved, forever young, forever Hollywood.